Okay, let's talk about this. Think about a moment in your life when you felt really, truly proud. I'm going to bet it was after you did something incredibly hard. But what if I told you that our whole idea of toughness, the brute force, the unshakable confidence, is actually, well, completely wrong? Today we're going to break down what real, science-backed toughness actually looks like.
So that brings us to the big question, right? What is real toughness? Because it's not about being some unfeeling robot or just gritting your teeth. The science points to something way more interesting and, honestly, a lot more powerful.
And here's the main idea right here. On one side, you've got the traditional view, all that movie stuff, brute force, faking it till you make it, and just ignoring any kind of discomfort. But on the other side is what the science actually tells us. Real toughness is about embracing reality as it is, learning to manage your emotions, and, this is a big one, fulfilling your own core needs. Let's dig into each of these.
Okay, first up, let's bust the myth of bravado. This idea that you have to act like you have it all figured out, that everything's under control even when it's not. Turns out, science says that's pretty much a recipe for disaster.
So the myth tells us to just act confident. But the reality is that real strength comes from embracing the actual reality of the situation. And listen, this isn't about being pessimistic. It's about being a realist. Because when things get tough, being overconfident can be the thing that takes you down. And you see this everywhere. Just think about a marathon. The beginners, they often shoot out of the gate, all full of confidence, and then they hit a wall. The veterans, they respect the distance. They know it's going to hurt, and they pace themselves. It's the same thing they found in U.S. Army survival training. The soldiers who went in expecting it to be brutal did way better than the ones who thought, this will be a piece of cake.
This idea is just perfectly captured by this quote from a military friend of a researcher who said, "An ounce of doubt keeps me sharp." See, a little bit of doubt, a healthy dose of respect for the challenge ahead, that's what keeps you on your toes. It is not a weakness, it's a strategic advantage.
So, here's what it all boils down to. It's this incredible mix of short-term pessimism with long-term optimism. What does that mean? It means you expect the next step, the immediate future, to be hard. You anticipate bumps in the road. But at the exact same time, you hold on to the unshakable belief that, in the long run, you've got what it takes to succeed.
All right, let's move on to our second big idea. We've dealt with confidence, now let's talk about pain and discomfort. That old advice to just push through it, it doesn't just fall short, it can actually lead to serious burnout.
So the myth is just ignore the pain. But the reality is that truly tough people don't ignore it at all. They acknowledge it and then they manage it. And that is a huge difference. It all starts with what's happening inside our brains.
Let's talk about a part of your brain called the amygdala. The easiest way to think about it is as your brain's alarm system. When you feel stress or pain, it starts ringing. Super useful. But here's the problem. For people who burn out, that alarm just never shuts off. Real toughness isn't about not having an alarm. It's about learning how to calm it down once you've gotten the message.
And check this out. This is proof that this is a skill you can actually learn. In this one amazing study, researchers put a hot probe on the skin of experienced meditators and, well, non-meditators. The initial flash of pain in the brain, it was identical for everyone. But what happened next was incredible. The non-meditators' brains stayed on high alert, while the meditators' brains went right back to a calm baseline almost instantly.
This skill, this superpower, actually has a name: equanimity. It's simply the ability to steady your mind and get back to your baseline after things get rough. This is what keeps you from burning out. And the best part? You don't have to meditate for thousands of hours to start building it yourself.
In fact, here are 3 really practical techniques you can use. First, zoom out and explain. When you're feeling frustrated, literally describe it as if you're watching someone else. Like, oh look, he's getting all worked up. It creates a little bit of space. Second, reappraise. Start seeing discomfort not as a threat, but as a sign you're growing. Kind of like feeling sore after a good workout. And finally, reassure. Just gently remind yourself, this too shall pass. Because every feeling, good or bad, is temporary.
Okay, for our third and final section, we're going to shift gears a bit. We're moving from managing the negative stuff to proactively building a powerful internal engine that just keeps you going no matter what.
The old school view says to just forget what you need and grind it out. But the real science of toughness shows us that to truly endure, you have to satisfy some core psychological needs. This is the stuff that fuels you when all the external motivation is run dry.
So what are these needs? Well, decades of research have pretty much boiled them down to these 3 things: autonomy, competency, and belonging.
You can think of these as the high-octane fuel for your internal engine. When you can tap into them, your ability to persevere just goes through the roof.
Let's start with autonomy. This is all about feeling like you have a sense of choice, that you're in the driver's seat. Even in situations where you're told what to do, you can almost always choose how you do it. For instance, runners on a treadmill pushed way harder when they had even a tiny bit of control over the settings. The key is to find the choice.
Next up is competency. This is that feeling of being effective, of actually making progress. When you're in the middle of a huge project, this means taking a second to look back at how far you've come and then focusing all your energy on just nailing the very next step. It's about feeling your own progress.
And finally, we have belonging. This one might be the most powerful of all. This is your why. It's about connecting what you're doing to something bigger than yourself. A soldier pushes through a tough situation for their comrades. An entrepreneur weathers the storm because they believe in serving their customers. You have to ask yourself, who are you doing this for?
Because when you satisfy these three needs, autonomy, competency, and belonging, your drive starts to come from the inside. It stops being about external rewards or what other people think. And when that shift happens, fear and pressure, they just don't have the same grip on you anymore.
So, as we wrap up, just remember this. Real toughness was never about bravado or ignoring pain. It's about embracing reality, managing your own mind, and fueling your internal drive. So with these new tools, I'll leave you with this question. What hard thing are you going to tackle next?